Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us here. This is a great opportunity for us to not only celebrate Veterans Day, but specifically those who served and sacrificed in World War I. There are pipe bands all over the world. We're meeting today to play the tune "The Battle's O'er" in honor of the 11 o'clock ceasefire that took place. We're very pleased that you joined us. We would like to thank some of the organizations that came together to help with this event, obviously all of the pipe bands. We'd also like to thank the Honor Guards of the Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office and the Utah Firefighters Emerald Society. We're going to begin today with a flag presentation conducted by the Utah Firefighters Emerald Society Honor Guard, following which Mark Fekinen of the Wasatch District Pipe Band and the Heathen Highlanders will address us. I'd like to ask you all please to remove your headgear and give the appropriate salute for your stature in the community. Honor Guard, please present the colors. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts they watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Friends, families, fellow pipers and drummers, members of the press and media, good morning. The building behind us was dedicated just 6 months prior to the United States' entry into World War I in June 1917. At that time, the war had been raging in Europe for several years. 18 months later, at the 11th hour of the 11th day on the 11th month, the armistice went into effect and the war was over. Today marks the 100th anniversary of that event, and all over the world, people are gathering to commemorate the cessation of hostilities in the most atrocious loss of life the world had ever seen. 21,000 Utahns joined the war effort. Among them were many relatives of those of us standing here today, and I would like to read you their names. As is traditional in Remembrance Day services in the United Kingdom, I will omit their ranks. Like the unknown soldier, their ranks no longer matter now. All gave some gave all. Willard Olaf Olson, James Bernard Murphy, John Andrew Barclay, Robert Sidney Barclay, Rule M. Eskelson, Israel Abbott, Frank Heinzen, Martin Joseph Benson II, George Harry Mortimer, Reese Arthur Wilson, Thomas Hughes, James Wesley Pulver, Ross Dowdall, Paul Henry Wolfe, Alfred Thomas Speakman, Arthur Thomas Fulton, Patrick McAndrews, Michael McAndrews, John Taylor Jarvis, John Weir Baxter, Earl Leslie King, Albert Fickus, Robert Andrew Scott McPhee, Alison Bland Scott McPhee, Bertram Heyman, Charles Matlock, Lorenzo Rowley, Orson Zera Rowley, Emil Ober, Andrew Ramage, Frank Mauser, William P. Chafin, Arthur O. Williams, John Hay, John Thomas Barnett, Alma E. A. Glad, and I'm sure there were many, many others who are missing from this list. Amidst all the centennial observations, this particular gathering today has additional significance for us. For most musicians, the instruments they play are a hobby intended to entertain. However, our bagpipes and drums had a very different role back then. For the Scottish and Canadian regiments and the members of the Anzac forces from Australia and New Zealand, the bagpipers' assignment was to march, unarmed and playing, directly into enemy fire at the front of the advancing troops. The scared soldiers behind them, many of them barely out of high school, took courage from the pipers and followed them over the top. Countless thousands to fall along with the piper in the mud, the barbed wire, and poison gas of this dreadful new form of warfare. By some counts, over 1,000 pipers lost their lives in what was essentially a suicide mission. To honour those brave musicians 100 years on, the College of Piping in Glasgow, Scotland, has asked pipers and drummers around the world to assemble at this time as a global massed band and play the retreat march when the battle's over. We've gathered today to pay our musical respects to the pipers of the First World War and to honour the veterans past and present who have served since then in so many wars and conflicts around the globe. Our band in Utah today, behind me, consists of members of all of our local bands: the Salt Lake Scots, the Thomas Cordner Memorial Band, the Utah Pipe Band, the Garden Valley Pipe Band, the Wasatch and District Pipe Band, the pipes and drums of the Unified Fire Authority, the Utah Emerald Society, the Payson High School Band, the Heathen Highlanders, and individual pipers and others from all over the state. We are ready to pay tribute to our brave predecessors in concert with other pipers around the world. But before we play, I would like to share with you a few first-hand accounts from that time. These accounts will give just a very small idea of why we are here and why this matters. These are the words of Piper Harry Lunan of the 5th Gordon Highlanders. Here he describes playing in 1916 during the Battle of the Somme. You were scared, but you just had to do it. They were depending on you. I played my company over the bloody top, right into the German trenches. It was stupid as hell. Men falling all around me, falling dead. It was bloody horrible. I just played whatever came into my head, but I was worried about tripping on the uneven ground which interrupted my playing. The enemy fire was murderous. The men were falling all around me. I was lucky to survive. Hearing the pipes gave the troops courage. Here is a description of action by a drummer, Corporal Walter Potter Ritchie of the Seaforth Highlanders. On July 1st, 1916, north of Beaumont-Hamel, France, drummer Ritchie, on his own initiative, stood on the parapet of an enemy trench under heavy machine gun fire and bomb attacks. He repeatedly sounded the charge, which rallied many men of various units who, having lost their leaders, were wavering and beginning to retire. Drummer Ritchie was awarded the Victoria Cross, the highest British military award for his actions that day. Those two men survived their ordeal. However, they were the exception. The majority of pipers perished. My own great-great-uncle, Robert Andrew Scott McPhee, a quartermaster in the Liverpool Scottish Regiment, documented the entirety of the war firsthand. Here is what he wrote home to his father in December 1914. Soon, messages came in that other casualties had resulted while entering the trenches. An F Company piper had been badly wounded. I wanted to go up to the lines to see if anything could be done, but the officers near me refused permission because there had been already casualties enough. I asked leave to go to headquarters or to a telephone station to try to get a stretcher to take away the wounded piper. The stretcher bearers were sent for. 2 arrived sometime before dawn, but the officer refused to allow them to proceed because it was too late. The poor piper died of bleeding and exposure during the forenoon in a trench full of water and without anything to eat or drink, and another wounded man had to lie on his corpse. It was all rather ghastly. My great-uncle does not state the piper's name. There will be many remembrances today, but especially for us pipers and drummers, our art has a very special meaning, one that we must never take for granted. Let us never forget the ultimate sacrifice paid by our forebears, whose last moments were spent playing the instruments we now cherish. Let us use our talents to bring joy in peacetime, but always to remember those who came before us. We will now observe a moment of silence as we think on the words of the wartime poet Lawrence Binyon. After this reading, a 2-minute silence will commence. During that time, please think of your loved ones who have served and think back to those pipers and drummers who died. They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. March no more, my soldier laddie. There is peace where there once was war. Sleep in peace, my soldier laddie. Sleep in peace, now the battle's o'er.
Dismiss!